karakia tātou, kia tau ngā manaakitanga a te mea ngaro, ki runga ki tēnā o tātou, ke māhia te hua, mā kihi, kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori, kia tūturu, ka whakamāua, kia tēnā, hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora everybody, and nau mai haere mai ki tēnei hui, the meeting of committee. We have an apology from Councillor Barrett and lateness from the Mayor. Do I have a seconder? And I do. Thank you, Josh. Now we'll move on to public comment. And I'll welcome forward Haere ki mua, Hakepa. Please come forward. And you're going to talk to Whakatupu Ngaingai, and you've got 3 minutes. And then the members may have some questions for you, Hakepa. Yeah, push the button.
On, yes.
Feel free to sit down or e too, up to you.
Bit of both. Tēnā koutou, members of the council, tangata whenua and tau iwi. Koutou. Ko Hakepa tōku ingoa. Sit down. He aha te mea nui o te au. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? The people, the people, the people. I'm speaking to point 5 of Memorandum 23. Which is Te Ngaingai Pool and Fitness Complex, the So I have already put in an in-depth observation kōrero complaint regarding the lack of basic customer service, acknowledgements at the front desk. So Te Ngaingai Pool and Fitness is the newly opened $68 million complex. It's a great taonga, a prized asset, described as New Zealand's most sustainable aquatic centre. No matter how environmentally sustainable a building is, it's still a shell if the culture is weak on the inside. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Kia ora.
Nā mihi o tō kōrero aroha me tō kaha. Thank you, Hakepa. And we've got Ian here today. So before we go to Ian, we will just cover off questions. Councillor Shaw.
Kia ora, Hakepa. Obviously, this means a lot to you. You can see that you're a little bit emotional. So you sort of kind of briefly mentioned what is it you actually want? What do you want to change? What do you want it to be better? How do you want it to be better?
Basic customer service on the front desk, basic acknowledgements, greetings. I enjoyed attending and for the first week of January for my own fitness journey. At about the 4th week, I did mention my concerns to, I think it was Ian, and he agreed. But after 2 more weeks, there were no improvements. And I'm talking about the face of this new complex are teenagers who I call gossip guards, the lifeguards. Sometimes there's an older employee, but I don't blame them. One, they don't have the skills to be the face on the front desk. They need to be mature. I don't blame they are gossip guards. That's what I call them. They're either on their phones. I blame management. I have received a response that there are going to be improvements. So I have decided I am going to return. I've had 3 weeks off and my fitness, and I started having sugar again, but it's going to happen. But I'm going to start attending the gym. It's an amazing little gym that we've got there, but it was really sucking the soul out of me. It was really affecting me because, like I acknowledge, and especially going into a complex like that, it's like the last week I decided to be like everyone else, head down and just walk in. It literally sucked the soul out of me, and I can't do it. So I have high expectations this time that the basics are going to be implemented. But again, it's connected to the gates. Gym members walk in, head down over here. The computer screen on the left side blocks the line of sight, so there's a few teething issues, and yeah.
Thank you, Hakepa. We'll see if any other questions, elected members. Thank you. It's okay, Ian. Okay. Ian. Well, just a very quick response.
Kia ora katoa. I acknowledge the previous speaker. I did speak to her at the counter several weeks ago, along with the customer service manager. We acknowledge that there are issues. We have lifeguards who are young working on the counter. We did address it, and that has since been addressed through a wider team meeting about customer service, acknowledging customers. Sometimes that can't always be done because it is a very dynamic environment, and especially with people going through the middle gate to the gym. We're coming into our training period at the moment, and we have customer service workshops and classes for the staff to go into, along with a whole range of other training, which we do as part of our cycle of staffing. I would also note that Hakepa hasn't been back since she spoke, and that overlaps the period of time where there may have been changes which she hasn't observed. That's all I have. Lovely.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you again, Hakepa. Lovely. I call forward Daniel Crisp. Haere ki mua, Daniel, and you're speaking to item 5, Hutt City Council Cemeteries, and you're also a member of the Wainuiomata Community Board. Welcome. But I think you're speaking as a member, as a resident.
Yes, yeah, as a resident today, thank you.
3 minutes, Daniel, and then any questions after.
No worries. I won't really labour the point. I've sent through my writing, so I guess just a quick recap that, the residents were never consulted around the cemetery services decisions in the past. When the cemetery land options were investigated, I don't believe it was done thoroughly and properly. And essentially I think we should assess that decision as per my notes that you've all got. I'll just take it you've read, so kind of happy just to skip to questions. Yeah.
Kia ora, Daniel, you know the drill. So elected members, do we have any questions? Councillor Parkin and then Councillor Tupou.
Kia ora, Daniel. Thank you for your report. I'm on the Shared Services Committee, and you've presented to us a number of times, and as always, they're well thought out and well justified reports. Just in terms of your general conversations with people around the Hutt Valley as to expectation of burial services, what's your general conversation been like? Has it been, for example, them expecting to be able to be buried in Taita Cemetery and then finding that it's closed and being surprised at that, or what type of conversations have you had?
Yeah, a lot of that. Obviously, as part of my work, I speak to a lot of funeral directors, and They say it is quite often that families are surprised that there's no local option anymore, just simply they don't know. And obviously that kind of goes alongside consultation. If you're never asked about the options, you don't know about the options. So that is definitely a big part of it, from what I'm hearing within the funeral homes. But generally, just when I bring it up in conversation, most people I talk to are pretty agreeable, like, oh yeah, it seems a bit weird that we don't have a cemetery option in Lower Hutt. A lot of people are cremated, which is still fine. They can still be accommodated within Taita and Wainui, but definitely in terms of respecting cultural practices and having a local option is definitely what most people that I talk to prefer. Yeah.
Councillor Tupou, and then Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and tēnā koe, Daniel. Just one question from me is, would you agree that, thinking 30 years ahead, that that's probably a regional conversation? And the reason I say that is because Wellington City, they're struggling to find land, and I don't know whether there's similar issues out there in sort of the Kapiti Mana area, but certainly here in the Hutt Valley. So thinking that long term, do you think that that would be a regional strategy or approach to finding what's next in 30 years' time?
Yes, I do. I guess slightly putting on my work hat, we are more than happy to have those conversations. Porirua have already started our process around cemetery expansion. Wellington are way down the track. I don't know what I can say publicly, but they're way down the track. They've got a piece of land they're looking at. Yeah, but my understanding is when our project manager talked to different people, there was no current appetite for a regional cemetery. But obviously that is part of the wider discussion, thinking 30, 50 years down the track, what do we do? Yeah, always happy to have those discussions. Yeah.
Councillor Shaw.
Thanks, Daniel, for the report. And you're aware that I'm on the Hutt Services Committee, and thank you for your past presentations as well too. And as you're aware, we are committed for the next 25 years. And I agree with your desire to have our people buried back here in Te Awakaranga Kitai. When do you think is an appropriate time to start that planning for the next 30 years? Is it now the right time, or do we look at it a little bit further down the track, or does it become a regional solution?
To be blunt, the right time was 2016 when Taita Cemetery shut. But we are here now. So I think the right time is now. I do think previous council's decisions around the cemetery services were lacking in consultation mostly, and I think we need to put that right. The first step, all I've ever wanted, like I said, is just for the residents to be consulted about it properly. If it turns out after full due diligence that there's no land options or it's too expensive, so be it. But go back to square one and consult. Yeah.
And do you think there possibly is useful land here in the Hutt that can be used in 30 years' time?
Yeah. I mean, I've done some Google map scouting and some topographical map scouting just out of my own personal interest. But I'm not going to tell your officers how to do their job. I'm happy to chat to them if they want to, but they're perfectly competent, and I think there are options. Wainuiomata North would be a good one. I know people bang on about the second access. It'll happen one day, and I think that's the kind of city expansion strategic thinking that we need to look at.
Thank you. Any further questions, elected members? Mayor Barry.
Thanks, Daniel. I know you've been a strong advocate on this for some time now. I know that also I've been at a community board meeting where some members of the public presented about this as well. However, when I'm out there in the community, this just does not get raised with me as a priority. When people talk to me, like I just do not hear it come up as, we've got so many things as a council we need to be focusing on and doing. How many people are talking to you about this? How many people proactively come to you? I understand you may mention it or talk about it, but how many people come to you saying that this is a priority? And again, would you not think this is better to focus on it with a regional lens rather than each individual council looking at it?
Yeah, again, more than happy about those regional conversations. it is just a reality. Land's only going to get more hard to find. So the whole region is going to look different in 30 and 50 years, obviously. I would argue that, again, people don't think about cemeteries and death until it happens to them. So whilst I take your point that not many people are talking to you about it, if you ask them, they would agree it's an issue. That would be my rationale. So just because someone isn't bringing up an issue doesn't mean it's not an issue. And if council have never asked them if it's an issue, we can't really sit here and say, oh, we don't think it's an issue, because we've never asked the residents. So that would be my thinking.
Any further questions left to members? Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Just thinking, thank you, Daniel, for raising this. And it is something that comes up at the time, sadly, when you find out. But in 30 years' time, I'm thinking, and I just wonder if you would consider it also that perhaps there might be other means in, to deal with our beloved and what happens to them.
Yeah, I mean, quite possibly. And that's probably more of a national conversation with legislation and methods of body disposal, which the Act is currently under review. But again, that still begs the question, does that mean we'll deny people their cultural rights to be buried if they choose that practice? Which I think we'll all agree the answer is probably no. So burial is always going to be an option. And to respect people's culture, we need to realise that. So trends may go down and demand for burial may lessen, yes, but I think it'll always be an option. Yeah.
We need to keep moving. Is it okay? One last question.
Just because you've, thank you, Chair. Just Daniel, because you've presented to the Shared Services Committee a number of times, just wondering if you've got any reflections on the cost per plot that is ever increasing. And I noticed that my fellow councillors have mentioned that we're talking 25, 30 years ahead. I'm just wondering if you could reflect on your understanding as to that 25 or 30 years ahead is based on all of the budgeted changes and implementations that we've got that, again, are increasing. And do you have any thoughts on whether or not we're actually looking at getting good value for money with the Akataroa plot?
It would be hard to answer that accurately, given that, as you know, I've questioned the concept designs of how many plots they think they're actually getting. So we can't really calculate per plot how much it's costing until we accurately know a good design, a detailed design of the new expansion at Akataroa Cemetery, would be the short answer.
Thank you, and thank you for coming, Daniel. And Arthur will cover off when it comes to the item. So we'll move to Mike Collett, Secretary Association of New Zealand, talking to item 7. Welcome, Mike. You've got 3 minutes, and elected members will ask questions after that.
Thank you very much, councillors. I'm Mike Collett. I'm the Vice President of the Secretariat Association of New Zealand. I'm responsible for secretariat units in the lower half of the North Island. And another one of my hats that I have, I'm also President of the Lower Hutt RSA. So I have an intimate involvement with the cadets here in the Hutt Valley. The reason I'm here today is to endorse the recommendations that council officers have before you. It's unfortunate that through changes of committees within the cadets that the lease was allowed to lapse, but fortunately we're now back on track. I'd like to acknowledge the work of councillors, of the officers over the last few months putting this together, and especially Nicole, who's been available whenever I needed to talk to her, and I'm very appreciative of that. We've been on that site on the Petone foreshore probably since Noah's Ark, because when checking building records within the council, there are no records of that building even existing. Although the leases, my first involvement was with the cadets on the Petone foreshore was back in 1973, and that building was well and truly up then. So effectively what I'm saying is we have a couple of I's to dot and a couple of T's to cross just to finalise the actual contents of the lease, but by and large the scans and the council officers are all singing from the same song sheet, and I endorse the recommendation of the 6-year lease with 2 rights of renewal.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions, members? No? Kaori? Pretty straightforward. Well, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
I welcome forward Hugo Van Stratum, and Hugo is going to talk to item 8, the assets review on community halls.
Kia ora, Councillor. Kia ora, public. Our Hutt City Musical Theatre leases Ipuni Hall for the last 45 years. And now there's this, again, we have been through this process before, the question of the council taking the lease back and running the booking from the council site. We, as a society, a musical theatre society, are very worried that our economic situation will be such that we will have to dismantle. So it is for the councillors to decide what is the best way that we could serve the council. Are we not providing a good service at renting out the community hall? Are we not providing a service for musical theatre and booking people who come to us? We have lots of well, at one stage it was called a community hub, artistic community hub. I don't hear that very often, but we do have Tai Chi, we have children's theatre on a Monday, we have Scottish country dancing. So there are lots of cultural things happening at Ipuni Hall that are renting around the time that we don't use the hall. There is a lack of usage from 1 o'clock in the morning till about 3 in the afternoon. The hall is not utilised as much as it could do. Maybe there's a possibility a booking system could connect to our booking systems, so there are more referrals come our way. So we do have more bookings during the day, but on the whole, we're pretty heavily booked, and we've done hundreds of shows with thousands of people involved, and thousands of people come to see the show over the 45 years, you can imagine. So the proposal doesn't really tell us in what way we can help the council and what costs they're missing out on by us being there. So I like the proposal to have more clarity to show what they're expecting from all the halls, how much income and how much they would charge the users. So Chris Cox and I are here on behalf if you want to ask us any questions. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Hugo. Do we have any part-time member? Chris, Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora. So one of the conversations that has been had with other community organisations is whether or not they're in a position to take over the running of the hall, because obviously the issues that we're having is the increase in ongoing maintenance of these assets is putting a significant financial burden on it, and also there's some inequity in terms of the way that different organisations get different amounts of money. So it's trying to even up that side of things. And one of the options has been offered to a number of different organisations to basically take over the running of the hall and the maintenance of the building. Would your community be able to do that at this point?
No. We do pay for the cleaning, And we do look after the hall as an asset. I was dragging car chairs that were dumped there away from the premises a few weeks ago. So we do help keep it tidy and make sure that the users leave it tidy. We have bonding systems and things that do that. But the maintenance, they've just done a huge job with our new toilets and fixing the roof because, alas, it had deteriorated pretty badly with leaks, and the foyer had all the the veneer panellings were all damaged. So council has spent a lot of money on it, and we have no way that we could maintain the buildings in that way. Yeah. It's very hard to put on shows and funding, but we haven't needed to apply for grants to do our show from the Community Arts Council because we do work for our money in this way with the lease money coming to us. So we are saving in one area there because we sort of work for it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Hugo. Further questions? No. Mayor Barry.
Thanks, Hugo. First off, just want to acknowledge the great performances and shows that are put on by your organisation, many of which I'm sure those of us around the room have been able to enjoy. Just trying to get to the nub of the issue, because quite often we would not have organisations wanting to even go near, managing bookings and the logistics of all of that thing. You'd want to just sort of focus on your core role, which is, theatre and everything you do for people in that space. So is that really down to the fact that it's the money side of what you get from running that to help with the running of the organisation, or is it around storage? Is it around use or being able to control that use more? Like what's the main concern? I'm just trying to get to that so we can understand it from your perspective.
We have storage of costumes and props and staging that we use there. And our booking system, we never know quite from year to year what time we put the show on, how long rehearsals will take. So at the moment we can do shows whereby Scottish country dancing can still use the hall as long as we have no show on the time. So they're using it while all the lighting and the staging, everything's up. We just clear the hall so they can use the space and then put all the trestles and tables and chairs back. So we try to maximise the use of the hall and our income in that way. And that income helps provide the rights to do the shows. Lighting and sound, it's all over $10,000 a show. And if we were to have to pay the rent for the hours we use it, it'd be quite exorbitant. Yeah.
So storage. So there's the cost aspect of the money you're able to generate, and then obviously you're not paying a fee of a daily rental fee.
We pay an annual fee of only $3,000, so we are quite privileged.
Yeah.
And they talk about raising the costs like 30%, and which is reasonable if the fees for the halls have not been adjusted for a long time, that us as the users and our other people that use the hall pay more. It would have to go up to supply to council with more return on their assets. We can see that. Yeah.
Final question from me, I suppose, and our role is to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, right? So there aren't many of these types of arrangement where there is an organisation, albeit we understand the great work you do, that have this type of setup. And is it fair that that your organisation has this with Hapuni Hall and others don't have it with other halls in our city?
I do feel we're privileged, yes. I do feel we're privileged to have this opportunity to do this. But I also think, and the proposal doesn't tell the cost that the council have for running their halls, so I can't make comment. We might be a saving for the council in doing this job for them, you know. So yeah, I can't. That's why the proposal is a bit complex when it doesn't say this is a staff input for hiring our hall. And I can imagine the event centre, the managing of that is very expensive, and that all went in the $24 return that comes from the the other 5 halls. But that doesn't explain how much costs has been going into managing them. Yeah, so I don't know that. I'd like to, that would help with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Hugo. And I too want to acknowledge the amazing work that you do and support to the community. Thank you.
Any more questions, Chris? You got anything to? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Aaron Moore and Stephen Church, Maungaraki Residents Association. Please come forward. Speaking to item 8, Essex Review as well.
Kia ora. Ko Aaron Moore tuku ingoa. I'm the president of the Maungaraki Community Association and also the current chair of Maungaraki School Board of Trustees. I'm accompanied here today by Stephen Church, our MCA secretary, and some board members, as well as Shane Robinson, the principal of the school. I'd like to thank you for giving us time to provide feedback on the proposal. For context, for those of you who don't know, the MCA runs the Maungaraki Community Centre and is currently well patronised, the same as Hugo was saying. A diverse range of interests, church groups, variety of sports and special interest clubs. And the school itself is a major anchor tenant for the hall, and Shane Robinson will speak more to this later on. As a registered charity, the MCA advocates for the community and supports local initiatives. We've used the revenue that's been generated by the centre to support community projects like the new bike track, donations to support local events like Christmas Carols Night, upgrades to centre facilities itself, grants to Maungaraki residents who are competing in regional or national events. So the association engaged with the assets review process in good faith when the council first wrote to us, to all affected groups in March 2024. And since then, we've met with council officers several times and have exchanged information. Our understanding at the time was there was a number of options that were on the table, and that this included things like increasing the lease payments to council, a divestment of assets, as was pointed out to Hugo by Mayor Barry, or the council moving to a council booking system. So there were a few options that were on the table for us. We were given the impression at the time that as the council navigated its way through the space, there would be constant communication with us, talking about what options are on the table. Last week, we received a draft paper laying out the council's preferred approach to its community halls, including our centre. As you can imagine, it wasn't ideal having 7 days to prepare some feedback for this, but we have reviewed the proposal and we do have some feedback and a few requests. So as ratepayers, we appreciate the financial pressures that the council and ratepayers are under at the moment. Maintaining halls like ours and Hugo's is an expensive exercise, and we understand that if the council took over the booking, you'd be able to recoup some of those costs. However, before you make any decisions about that, we would ask you to give us more time to consult with the community. 7 days isn't a lot. We haven't had a chance to talk to everyone. In its current state, the proposal could have far-reaching impact on the school in particular, and other groups like the church group, as well as regular hall users. The proposal may even affect the viability of some of these groups, including the MCA itself. The proposal also mentions that any changes could be phased in over a 2-year period. We'd like to be involved with that process as much as possible so we understand what those phases look like and how we can mitigate some of those impacts to the council itself. Like Hugo, we feel privileged. Like we know that we understand that we've got this golden goose and we've been allowed to operate this hall for a while. Our main concern, even as an association, is making sure that the users of the hall are protected. We would hate to see them priced out of the market because some of these clubs operate on a smell of an oily rag. So I appreciate that you want these prices to be consistent, but please don't lose sight of the actual value it gives to the rest of the community. So I'd like to invite any questions to the council.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you for coming in and speaking and taking time out of your work schedule, I'm sure. And thank you for the work you do up there with the community. So am I hearing right that you're accepting that council has to increase the prices?
We do. Yeah,
Okay.
we appreciate that.
And would I be right in assuming that over time you'd like to see that a gradual increase, not go up straight away? Did I hear that?
It's more, yes, I guess so. Our main concern is our users of the hall. As an association, all the work we do, like we appreciate that we're actually getting money from the hall users to be able to do that. But our main concern is that if we can do that work in other ways, we're a registered charity, it's mainly the impact on the hall users themselves because they are very small clubs, karate clubs, you know, the veggie co-op that Chris is part of. And what we don't want to see is that there's a massive shock to that charge so that people are going, well, I can't do that anymore. I can't operate my club anymore. They can't go anywhere else in Lower Hutt to do that anymore because it's all going to be the same charges. But in particular, the school, where my chair of the school, it's a massive asset to the school, and their day-to-day operations revolve around that hall, the library, the school are the trinity of Maungaraki's heart. So, yeah, with the school losing access to that, it could have a major impact on them. But Shane will talk to that later on.
Any further questions? Thank you. And we have, it will be addressed in the first item. We're going to move it up so that the items will be addressed. Thank you. Call forward Shane Robinson, Maungaraki School. And you have 3 minutes, Shane, and you're talking to the Assets Review as well.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora, everyone. Kia ora, everyone at the back there. Great to be here, really privileged. Hey, what does it mean to have a collaborative relationship? Maungaraki School has been in a unique position with Hutt City Council over the last 8 years that I've been principal at the school. We have embarked on many unique collaborations which have made Maungaraki thrive and Maungaraki's students and children thrive. We are a part of a collaboration around a community library which is unique and unlike anything in Lower Hutt or the wider Wellington region, which we have worked together on to make successful. We have been collaborative on a new bike track and scooter track up at Maungaraki, a new car park and entrance up at Maungaraki, a community garden which is well cared for by Wendy and some of the team and the children at Maungaraki. We have an amazing turf which our children and the community sports teams use. Maungaraki School is the heart and the hub of the community up there. And I know Hutt City Council's goal is to have communities thriving. Maungaraki community really thrives. As a school, these proposed changes in pricing and scheduling they will really do a damage to our curriculum and the students' engagement in the curriculum. They will also damage community engagement and the way that we can interact with our community and the impact that we can make with our community. The proposed changes make it such that we cannot continue on using the hall like we have been able to use the hall. We understand that we are in a unique position. However, what we would love to do as a school is ask you to work in a unique way with us. We have always come to the table and thought outside of the box with the council and found ways forward for our community and the children of the school in particular, which benefit everyone. Our school is incredible. If you've been up there, and I know some of you have really put effort in up there, it's an incredible place to be. The way these changes are and the rush around these changes has really put us in an awkward position, and a position that, as a principal with Tuamaki, I feel really uncomfortable with for my students. So I'm speaking on behalf of 400 students as well as the community here. The one thing that I just would say, we would really love some time to understand how this is and what we can do to work in a different way with you to make it sustainable. We have managed the hall in the past, we've managed the bookings, we've done all kinds of bits and pieces to contribute, and we do contribute financially as well, and we understand that that's an expectation. The last thing I'll just leave you with is the hall was constructed around the 1980s as a project between the school and the Mangaraki community. So they joined together. It was built on school land, and then it was gifted to Hutt City Council for $1. Now, I would doubt that it was gifted for $1 without the thought that going forward that we would be able to work in partnership. I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions, Councillor Parkin?
Kia ora, Shane. Thank you. I was going to ask that question about the history of the building, and thank you for elucidating on that. I'm guessing there wasn't any formal agreement on that dollar transaction that you've got access to?
I can't find any in my office, no.
Councillor Briggs.
Thanks for coming in. So just a question on the timeline. You're saying this has been rushed from your perspective. When were you first made informed that we were doing work in this space around our halls and around the way that we come to a uniformed approach?
Thursday night last week. So I understand that there's been work going on behind the scenes, but I had no idea that the decision was this soon. And I understand that we kind of sit underneath the MCA umbrella, like we're the biggest client underneath the MCA. However, just with the unique position that the school and the council have and the amount of work I do with Joanne Ransom and the team at the Hutt Libraries, and I just would have loved for us to be in a room to sort of talk it out and find a way forward.
Thank you. Shane, I've got a question for you. Were you aware that it was in the consultation for the long-term plan, and what we're looking at today, this is an alignment of the halls, of the assets, and the halls across the city. So we've got Wainuiomata, Taita. They are, we're finding a uniform way, which is a fair across the city. And this is just a start, that if you don't come to an agreement, it will come back to committee. So this is not a final, are you aware this is not a final decision?
100%.
So there's plenty of time for collaboration.
100%. Just want to make sure that the school's voice is heard,
Ka pai.
Yeah.
Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, I guess, thanks for coming in, Shane, and also Hugo. I appreciate what you do in that community. What I'm a little bit uncomfortable about is that we don't know what numbers come through your halls. Are you in a position to be able to provide that information for that final decision? And when we talk about numbers, that's what we always make decisions on. You're able to give us exactly who and how many and how often and all that sort of stuff. Are you in that position to be able to do that for us?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I could easily break down what happens during a week for a school in terms of cultural learning, sports, and the impact that it has on our students and our tamariki. That's an easy thing for me to do. That wouldn't take me half an hour. As for outside of school hours, I know the MCA have a really detailed kind of schedule of what happens out in the hall.
Kia ora, Shane. I'm just going to move that the public comment be extended until all speakers have heard. We've gone over the time, but it's important kōrero. So do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis. And question, Councillor Tupou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora. Shane, just want to seek clarification again, because it sounded like, and my ears sort of pricked up, this supposed gift. Could you just clarify that again?
So Mangaraki School there used to be two schools in Mangaraki, Puketiro and Otoanga School. It was a long time ago. And around the 1980s, the Mangaraki Hall was built in conjunction with the Mangaraki community. It was built on school land, and if you've ever seen the land up there, it's chopped into a million pieces, and we often have to work with the council on getting bits and pieces. That's why we have quite a close relationship. As the hall was built and constructed, it was always designed to be a hall that was joint between the two schools and also the community. So it was gifted back to the community for $1 from the Ministry of Education.
So from your understanding, there was an intent on, and I'm just going to use the word partnership, meaning reciprocity.
And I would love to bring it back to Te Riti and the partnership, because that's kind of how I feel. I believe there was intent and a partnership that we would work together. I just think that makes sense. The school is a big part. It's the heart of the community. It just makes sense that we work together. We really, just as a school, we would love to, I'd like to say thank you, because this council has done so much for our school. I have people visit all the time and they are amazed at what we have at Mangariki School and the resources and the things that the tamariki have. And it's because of the help that you've given us, and we just want a little bit of help in going forward with this situation too. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Shane, thank you. Oh, yep. One more question.
Good to see you, Shane, and just acknowledging the partnership that's been there for some time. And and I talk around the country about what we've been able to achieve with the library and working in collaboration, and it's something I'm really proud of that we've been able to do together. I suppose just looking at the numbers, as I think someone else mentioned before, when we do look at sort of 153,000 in operational costs for the council, and all we're getting is $100 in revenue.
Yeah.
I mean that, when you look at that without knowing the context and the history and the background, it is very, very stark. So I suppose you mentioned before, hey, let's get in a room and talk about what a solution looks like. Have you any thoughts at this point of what that could look like to ensure, the school is still well catered for with the use of that hall?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we think out of the box all the time. So we have office staff that are really willing and ready to manage and use your numbers to manage bits and pieces up at the hall. But also, I know when you look at the numbers, we give $100 and it costs so much for maintenance. However, what's not seen there is the impact that it has on the community, the impact on the students and the impact of the people of Lower Hutt City. So seeing the kapahaka performances that come out of that practice twice a week, seeing the assembly, seeing the pride, seeing the sports, seeing the roller hockey people that are now representing New Zealand over in Australia. So lots of those things are happening that I'd love to sit down and talk with you about. The other thing which the school is very willing to do, we understand that at the moment the payment may not be enough, but what we don't want to do is get priced out of the market so that the tamariki are missing out. So we're happy to meet in the middle. We always are, and thank you for the work on that we've done in the past, but we'd love to have a conversation. Yeah. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Shane, and thank you. Thank you for your kōrero. Chris Cox, is he here? You're here. Kia ora, Chris, from Hutt City Musical Theatre, and you two are speaking to item 8, the asset review. You've got 3 minutes.
Yeah, no, cool. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Never done this before, so it's pretty cool. I actually didn't realise Hugo had lined up to speak as well, so I'll just cover some points, and I'm probably in a more unique position to answer some of your questions, as I'm the treasurer of Hutt City Musical Theatre, as well as the sort of appointed hall manager. So I deal with all the bookings. I know all the figures, I know all the stats. I've done a memo or a report based on the memo that was sent out last week, and I drafted that, sent it through to Maria, and should have made it to all of you, hopefully. The key points from that are really, we've had the hall for 40, 45 years. We've provided the service to the community. It's a massive amount of volunteer hours. It's all labelled in my table. There's been a lot of no collaboration and sort of a lack of clarity on lease arrangements. We had a lease that was in place for, it was a historical lease that was in place for 20, 30 years, and then sort of just happened to be sort of drips and drabs every month, and we kept asking questions and never really got an answer. And I suppose we expected things were coming to a head, financially speaking as well. We've been paying, $3,000 a year. We always knew that was reasonably low. We've expected it to go up. We've been waiting for it to go up, and we've definitely seeked and talked to people at the council about what is the position. We had a meeting in April last year where I think it was Andrea I talked to Andrea at the library. So we knew it was coming, and then all of a sudden last week we got this memo, and it was kind of like, whoa, what's going on? So we're a little bit on the fence about that. I don't feel like we've been given enough time to fully work with this, and I feel like, as everyone else has spoken here about assets and the asset register and review and everything like that, every situation is very, very different. And touching on the points of others, we are definitely in a unique position, definitely privileged. The impacts on our operations, it's not necessarily about the income we gain from hall hires. We can definitely offset that with other expenses, with the cleaning expenses. that the shortfall that's been created, the $30 million in shortfall, like you're not going to get that by taking the hall back office. If the purpose of the hall is to provide that service for the community, we match the rate that I believe we match the rate that other hall hires are hired out to through the central booking system. So like talking on another point before about the maintenance, like we could, but we'd have to increase the rate per hour to like $150 an hour, which is unfeasible for community, the community user. Basically, like we're willing to negotiate. We're willing to sit in a room and talk about what this actually looks like going forward. I believe one of the councillors talked about before about transparency. That's all well and good, but you have to ask for it. We've never been asked about how many bookings do you guys have? How many hours are you using the hall? How many, what's the, how many bookings? What type of bookings? I've got all that information at my disposal, but yeah, have never been asked to provide it. And I suppose the main point the final point that I'll make is it's probably the hardest thing is managing a show season. And if the booking system goes in-house and everyone is just allowed to jump on a computer and block out slots or whatever, that's going to massively impact the way we're able to perform a show and pick dates and slots of time and everything like that. That's probably the biggest thing. Yeah, cool. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your expert feedback. I'll open it to questions. Mayor Barry.
Thanks, Chris. I think you may have answered my question at the end there.
Yep.
So if there was one, like I did with Hugo, the one thing that is really crucial, I would have thought, is with the way you operate is the show times and being able to block out those times, and because of the setup and all of the, et cetera. And
yep.
So is there a way that if we were to centralise the system and take it, and I understand your points on that, and we'll have to talk about it, do you think there would be a way for us to still work through that to ensure that you're able to have those booking times and the likes?
I think it's just, thank you. I think it's just a matter of sitting down and talking about how that's going to work and how that's going to look. But just, I think needing to have that conversation is the priority, working out how it's going to fit in with the schedule and how it's going to work. I mean, like we've talked about how many people hire the hall. Like it's not really in a prime position or a location. It's not CBD located. It's not used for conferences or anything like that. By taking the booking system in-house, I don't think you're also going to get a lot of extra bookings. The bookings that I receive are juggled around not only us putting on our show, but also the regulars that we have that Hugo, indicated before.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora. Thank you, Chris. And well done if this is your first time speaking at council. Nice job. Just in terms of the building history, is there any of that history that we're missing? It's always been a rental agreement. It's not been gifted or anything that we need to
be aware of? It's a standard agreement. It's always, as far as I'm aware, it's always been under a lease. And we've operated that space for 40 or 45 years. The lease has been fairly sort of like, this has been the lease agreement, and it's been a lease agreement that's been in place for like 30 years. And then as of, I think, 6 years ago, it was put on a hold and just put on a cyclic monthly pattern, and that's where we've been at for a little while. We've actually had a similar scenario to this back when Ray Wallace was mayor. We had a meeting at the Remakery, and it was a similar sort of discussion about taking the booking system online, in-house and everything like that. And at that point, we were sort of given back what we needed at that point, but it's come around again. Yeah.
Thank you again. Thank you again, Chris.
Cool. Hey, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I do have to get back to work, but thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Right?
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
I'll call forward our final speaker, Neil Gray from Eastbourne Sports and Services Club. Please come forward, Ian, and you're talking to item 8, the asset review.
Thank you very much. Also, first time here. Quite nice. So the main point that I'd like to make about the asset review is we have a number of clubs in the Eastbourne Sports and Services Club: rugby, football, cricket, RSA, croquet. And we also got the notice on the last Thursday about the review, came across our desks. And while we acknowledge that there are definitely a need to maybe change things up and acknowledge the financial situation, which affects obviously the council and also our clubs, what we'd like to do is to have some more time and just building on what some of the other speakers have said, maybe sit down and have a look at the numbers on both sides of what's it cost, what the bookings are. We were offered to purchase the community centre, I think maybe 15 years ago, which was declined, but maybe it's another, that could be something that would be worth revisiting based on the numbers. In the memorandum, it talked about the ESSC would pay $4,000 a year when, in fact, the letter I have to Urban Plus was to be underwritten. Now that I'm not sure if that agreement, and I can table that later. My lack of preparedness sort of speaks to the point that I'm trying to make. So underwrite it rather than actually pay, and I'm not sure whether that agreement has ever been activated. Eastbourne Football Club wanted me to note that they're currently paying for training separately, so when they go into the hall, they sort of feel effectively they've paid for that privilege. As to the bookings, it is true that the bookings that we have tend to be block bookings, and they don't necessarily speak to the actual usage. And so that could be something that, and our bookings are done through the council, and maybe that's something we can go back to our groups and say, look, is there some way we can look at when it's actually used versus being booked out, releasing it? Being a representing the cricket club, and we actually released a block booking that we had and was actively being used for the use by the radio-controlled car people, which basically on the basis that we understood the need for there to be revenue generated from that, and I think it was a decent chunk of money. So we are experienced in collaborating and being flexible and that sort of thing, so we'd like that to continue. We don't have any information on whether bookings have been declined because of those block bookings. So again, it might just be a case of getting tighter on the information, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Neil. Any questions? Members, Mayor Barry.
I should declare a conflict because I do play cricket at Eastbourne, but given that I never show up to training, I'm not contributing to some of those bookings.
We need that.
But no, just I suppose. So I just wanted to clear that, but also again acknowledge the great work that happens down there and the work that you guys do. So you mentioned, Neil, because the one concern was it looked like there was a lot of bookings, but the actual use was the question. So you'd be keen to have a conversation to say, well, how can we make sure that is freed up for actual use?
So the bookings are there mainly for weather. So if you've got a bunch of juniors and it's hosing down, then having it there is good. But we might be able to go back through the various people with bookings and say, is there some way that we can flag in your system whether it's actually going to be used or whether it's a contingency? Might be one way of doing it. And if there is a new system coming in, you only have to book at the Hairy Barbers to say, I want to go here and the barber's available, these slots, to do something where you could, at short notice, say it's available.
Thank you. Any final questions? No? Well, thank you, Neil, and I just thank you all for the very constructive feedback that you've given and to the passion that's happening in your communities, that and these assets are a central part of that. So with that, we're going to have a precedence of business because we've got so many speakers here. We're going to move in accordance with Standing Orders 10.4. I call precedence of business to item 8, Assets Review, and we'll bring that to the top. So I'll ask Alana Laban, Head of Assets and Facilities Management, to speak to the item. And that's on page 33 of the agenda, members. Kia ora, Alana.
Kia ora. I'll take the report as read. As part of the LTP, Council agreed a new approach to how we manage the community facilities. which included better optimisation and greater levels of cost recovery. At that time, we all acknowledged this would mean revisiting some historic arrangements, and this may not be popular. However, it was necessary to ensure that the costs of providing facilities in the future is being shared fairly between the users and wider ratepayers. This was consulted on as part of the LTP. We sent letters out to every tenant that had a lease or hired a space from us, and we held community drop-in sessions which were well attended. You've heard from some of the people that were there. The message then was that everything would not change overnight, but that over time as the opportunity arises, we'll be looking to reset how these facilities are used and the cost recovery. We also said community groups will be part of that conversation, which is why we are seeking to start that conversation with them now. So this paper is actually seeking the committee's approval for us to start the conversation, and also the parameters for that conversation. So I know that we've heard a lot about not having sufficient time, but this paper is all about us starting those conversations and giving them the time to feedback to us.
Thank you, Alana. And he pātai tōna mema. Any questions? Councillor Shaw.
Thanks for the paper, Alana, and one of the things that worries me is that $35 million shortfall, which we need to address in some ways. And I'm all for alignment and parity across all community halls. But I've also got some sympathy for these groups and some of their historical arrangements. And I think I kind of get a sense that they may have thought that today was a done deal, but we're actually just starting the conversation. And it appears to me that all groups are willing to work together or work with us to address those shortfalls. So that's what we're looking forward to for the next, how long do you think this might take, those conversations to work through?
I think once we get the parameters from this committee, we will start those conversations and hopefully come to a shared agreement with those groups. I mean, there's obviously a lot of different histories around some of the buildings, and a different desire from the different groups about what they might want to see that agreement being. But we would want to work through that as soon as possible with them. And if for any reason we weren't able to come to agreement, we would return to this committee.
Any further questions? Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Alana. Just a question for yourself and for Andrea, just reassurance that with the diversity of users and lead tenants that we've got the capacity at the officer level to have these conversations over the coming weeks.
Probably not over the coming weeks. I think it'll take quite a lot longer than that, because they're conversations that, we've heard quite 3 different scenarios that need to be understood and talked through. So I think it won't be weeks, it'll be months, but we'll put the resource in that's needed over whatever time it takes.
Any final questions? Okay. Thank you, Alana. If there's no further questions, just before we put to the vote, the Mayor just triggered me that I didn't do the conflict of interest declaration. So I'm just going to quickly cover that off. Call on any members to declare any conflicts of interest. So you may do that now, Mayor Barry.
Yeah, so I'm a member of ESSC.
Yes,
but I don't believe it's precludes me from partaking.
Yeah. Yes. Any others? A question regarding conflicts? Okay, so one final question, Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Thanks, Alana. So the work we've heard from, we've heard from everybody, and it's to have kōrero with everybody in the groups. And we're agreeing today to A, and which is approves option A, align the management of community halls with the assets review to address the budget shortfall. So that's the conversation that will be had, or will it have to match what we've said in the options? In the progress, increasing the charges up to 30%, but not beyond the 19% cost recovery. Are they all conversations that are going to be had?
I can probably speak to that one. I probably just would reflect on the fact that there are three very different scenarios with different sets of users and different needs. What the parameters for the conversation are that council does wish to align the halls to the principles of the asset review, and that we need better cost recovery, and that we'd like them better optimised, and that we are proposing that any transition to a new arrangement happens over time, and that I think we've suggested that there's a 2-year transition period to a new arrangement, and over that time the revenue is potentially shared in some way over that time, so that it doesn't happen overnight. And that as part of that consideration and as part of the optimisation, we look at whether they should come back in to council's new digital bookable system, because we are seeing already in our other community halls that is increasing the usage of those halls. But we have 3 bespoke situations that we need to talk through all of those. So the parameters are that we get better cost recovery, that we do things to optimise, and that we have a transition.
Mayor Barry.
Thanks. Probably a question for Andrea, because it's around some lines. If we were to approve option A here today, would that then mean the final arrangements, once those conversations have happened, would come back to us for approval, or is this the final time it would come back to council?
So as part of the assets review, we said that we would seek to do it through conversation and agreement, and where we couldn't do it by agreement, decisions would come back to this committee.
I wonder if it's helpful just to give, because I do understand maybe some of the concern from members organisations who spoke, that by approves option A, align the management of community halls with the assets review, is kind of suggesting that that's our position, and it's decided, and it's important that these are good faith conversations. So I wonder if we can just change that to approves option A in principle, so it achieves the same, I think, our intent, because we're clear with our intentions. That just gives, I think, a bit of goodwill for us to have those conversations. Is that helpful? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think in principle it sets that this is the start of the conversation. Any final questions? Okay, so we've done conflicts of interest, so we will go on to, I move the motion that the committee, and could we get the items up? So the first 5 are noting. First is receives and notes the information, and then item number 6 is approves the option in principle to align the management of community halls with the asset review to address the budget shortfall. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis. I've put the motion forward and it's moved and second. Those in favour, please say aye. Yes. Yes, we can. I'll just take that back. Yeah. Okay, we'll put it to debate.
Kia ora. Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to, in debate, acknowledge the community's voice in this. Obviously, it is not a conversation that we have finished having at this point. It is the start of a conversation, and thank you to Mayor Barry for that amendment. I think that makes it much more apparent that this is not done and dusted, but very much the point of where we're going, where we need to go, but also that we need to have those conversations with the community. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. And just to follow on from that, and thank you to the officers for their work that's going to be going ahead and working with our community. It's very important that we get this right, and I do understand that, council's in a hard place with the money we have to, manage our buildings, and it's needed. So, but if we can all work together and be, open with each other, I think we'll get a good result. So thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora. I'd just like to really acknowledge all the speakers who came in today to speak with such conviction and passion. And I think what we don't see in measurable numbers and figures is the social investment and that incredible outcome that you all give to our community, which is so rich. So thank you, and thank you to the officers who will be starting this process. And collaboration is exactly where it's all about and what it's all about. And I think that through transparency of information and through sharing what the needs are, I'm really hopeful that a positive solution will be found in a really good way forward. So ngā mihi kia koutou, thank you all for contributing today and all that you do for our community.
Mayor Barry.
Agree with what everyone has said, but I also just want to say that I think this is a good lesson of the importance of going about these types of issues in a really structured and strategic way. I recall, I think it was Chris who mentioned the conversations about a Puni Hall. I recall years ago where so often, for whatever reason, people would just try and pick off one or two without actually looking at the entire picture of how things work across the city. And I fully supported a Puni Hall back then and their concerns, the theatre organisation, because it did feel like they were somewhat being targeted. Whereas I think when you were able to demonstrate the picture across the entire city, have these conversations with everyone, then it actually paints a pretty fair picture where I think the comments and public comment acknowledge that, you know, we've got a bit of a thing we need to work through as well. So really just a bouquet to the team on this process, this point, and just also reinforcing to those in the public gallery that if there is an agreement, ultimately it will be your elected representatives who make the final call, and I think that is right as well, that will come down to us. But I do hope we're able to, in the most part, come to agreements as well.
Councillor Tupou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this direction is, it can be exciting, I think, as we embark on this journey of the future of these community spaces and places. Hearing from, you know, whether it's football in Eastbourne or the arts, which is very important, and the activities of our tamariki. But as mentioned, Madam Chair, these are three unique situations, and I'm sure that the officers will go about this with care and due diligence. And that's the balancing act as kaitiaki stewards of our city, ensuring that these facilities are safe, fit for purpose, that they are serviceable, but also that you're able to make it a home. And very much part of our community. So, Madam Chair, these parameters allow us to explore the options which we've heard from the speakers, whether that means looking at, you know, hey, I know that there's a conversation in the report on sharing and maybe more sharing opportunities, but that's not always the case. And what I've heard today, there are some circumstances where there are groups that have that facility for the majority of the time. So what are the opportunities there? So, Madam Chair, I'm excited to see where this goes. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Tupou. If that's the final questions, I'll just add a note. Thank you for the very good report. And as noted by the Mayor, this is a very big, large piece of work that's happening that's requiring us to look across the city at our assets and are we optimising them the best in our ever increasing costs of our assets, and have we got a fairness lens over the city when these very three unique, and noting this is just the start of the conversation, but we equally look at the other assets and halls that we have across the city, and are we doing this in a uniform fashion? So there is a lot to think about, and the kōrero starting. So I've put forward the motion, it's been seconded. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against? I declare the motion carried. Kia ora, thank you. Thanks, Alana. Thank you, everybody. And we are going to move on to the next item. We will go back to, and I'll just give a second if people would like to leave. Thank you. So I move back to item 5, recommendations to Te Kaunihiri regarding the Hutt City Council Cemetery Future Focus. I ask Arthur Nelson to come forward, Head of Parks and Reserves, to speak to the item. Thank you for your report, Arthur, and if you've got any comments to add.
Kia ora, and through you, Chair, thanks very much for having me forward to present this report. I've probably just got a few comments, just a bit of context really, I think, about some of what occurred in the public speaking earlier. So the first thing, this is just really searching for some direction from Council on where we go with this particular issue. In terms of whether, if we were to do an investigation on this, we would probably need some clear guidance from Council before putting the resources and effort into doing that, because it would be quite a comprehensive piece of work that we'd have to do. I think the other thing worth mentioning, and the point was raised by Mayor Barry, we don't tend to get significant numbers of queries or complaints in this area, as we might do with Avalon Park or Mitchell Park or some of the parks. So, but in defence, obviously, of Daniel and Mr. Crisp there, and some things he said, it's probably not the first thing on people's minds when they wake up in the morning about their mortality and countenancing where that might be or where they might be buried. So it's probably one of the things on, should we say, to the back of people's minds necessarily than full front there. I think the other thing I'd just like to mention as well is the point raised by Deputy Mayor Lewis in terms of other ways of afterlife care. Obviously, things like cremation tend to be, in general terms, in the national context, certainly in the authorities I've been in prior, do tend to be exceeding burials. I don't have the definitive information locally, but it is a general way things are moving. So I think those are just a little bit of background context, probably before I hand over to you and basically and just say any questions I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Arthur. He pātai tōna ngā mema. Any questions from members? No? Okay. Councillor Parkin.
Sorry, I do think that we need to have this conversation. I'm trying to phrase it as a question. And that is, you mentioned that we haven't had a huge engagement with the public. It's not something that people come up and approach council about. Do officers have the capacity to go out to funeral homes and actually see what the funeral homes feedback is, and whether or not we do actually have an issue that there are people who are disgruntled that they don't have the ability to inter their loved ones locally?
I think I better clarify what I was talking about before. I'm not sure of the consultation or discussion that has been undertaken in this particular area in the past, though clearly it is a reasonably significant item, so one would have assumed when it was discussed reasonably well with the public out there. In terms of have we got the capacity to go out and do the sort of work you're indicating there, at this point I would have to say no. We would need direction from council to specifically say, this is something we want you to look at.
Follow-up question, Councillor Parkin.
Yeah, just on your comment about has there been a significant discussion? Mr. Crisp Daniel has commented in the past and has been involved with this and has brought it to my attention through the Shared Services Committee that actually there has not been significant consultation on this. It has flown under the radar. I'm just wondering what is your basis of your understanding that we've had that consultation?
So I think all I can do is refer to what I said previously. Right at the moment, we've got quite a clear decision on where we should be focusing our efforts, and that's what we are doing. Like I said, I think if we were to consider this in the future, then we would probably need that direction before we did that. It would be difficult to do it otherwise.
Mayor Barry and then Councillor Shaw.
Sorry to bump in. I think it's important. It's pretty clear in the paper that we need to give the direction. So the slightly unfair questions of Arthur. At the end of the day, it's this council's decision on whether this is something we want to move forward with, look into closer or not. And that's ultimately what we're deciding today, I think.
Councillor Shaw.
Thanks for the report, Arthur. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Daniel, and that's about when is the right time to start. We're committed to stage 3 at Akatarawa, take us up to the next 25 to 30 years. When is the right time for us as a council to start the planning for the next stage, whether it's regional or just local? Any idea when that might be?
Again, my understanding of the Akatawara Cemetery is it's got quite a bit of capacity for the future. So essentially what we're talking about here, if we're to look at something else, is a strategic shift. But a strategic shift where you're already investing in a significant development, which has got significant costs with it and has a significant ability to carry this service forward. So if the decision was to look at doing something else, that would have to be against the background of knowing that there was quite an already significant strategic approach. And whatever we did, if we were to do something locally, would require obviously further funding and more input. So again, there's a bigger strategic decision to be made, I think, really before I could give you any sort of real decisions or view on that. Like all these things, the sooner the better. If council was going to decide they wanted to go down that track, then the sooner we knew about that, the better, the more we could make a comprehensive submission at some point in the future.
Thank you, Arthur. Any final questions? Councillor Tupou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora, Arthur. I think the first question is, this sort of arrangement, I think, has been around for a long time, possibly 30 years, is that right?
Sorry, the particular arrangement you're
in
referring
terms
to?
of the, Akatarawa being a shared service between Hutt City and Upper Hutt.
I don't know the full story, but I mean, I would have to do some more research on it, but I believe it's been a good number of decades, yes.
I mean, it's in the report as read. So my question is, do you think it would be, and Madam Chair, I'm open to reprimand here if I'm going off track. Do you think it would be reasonable or unreasonable to consider another path in terms of an alternative to what's before us today? And I'm not an expert, but obviously that would be a huge undertaking cost-wise as well.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's a difficult one to answer. Certainly, in terms of people wanting to be buried locally, there probably is a desire out there for some people. In terms of moving forward on a completely different arrangement, as I say, it would be quite costly. It would not be a cheap option.
Thank you. If there's no final questions, I will move the motion that the committee recommends that Council 1 receives and notes the information, 2 notes the potential closer alignment of services with Upper Hutt and provide guidance to officers which will be relayed to the Hutt Valley Services Committee, Shared Services Committee, and 3 notes the information on Council's current strategic direction on the location of cemeteries and provide guidance to officers which will be relayed to the Hutt Valley Services Committee. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs. Is there any discussion? Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you to officers for the work. I'm not comfortable with where we're sitting at the moment, and I'm still trying to work out exactly what I want to do here. I think we should actually be directing officers to investigate whether or not the community has a desire for burial options within within Te Awa Kairangi Kitai. At the moment, it is a big question. We haven't correctly and properly addressed it. And I don't think that we're giving the opportunity for the community to talk about something that we don't generally talk about. We don't talk about death. We don't generally think about death. The conversations that I've had with members of the public have been a level of surprise whenever it's come up. There is a general assumption that they can be buried in Taita Lawn Cemetery. And when they find out that actually, if you want to be buried, the only general option that you've got, unless it's a private arrangement, is Upper Hutt. And it's a long way to drive. And I've had conversations with people about that when they want to visit their loved ones and they're buried in Akataro Cemetery, that it is a long drive. I acknowledge that it is a potentially very expensive thing that we are embarking on, but through the Shared Services Committee, we have also seen the prices for the services that we have at the moment go up, and the cost per plot continues to increase. We've had Daniel's information about the fact that he's reluctant to comment on the price per plot because of the way that the number of burial sites that are available has changed. So I think we first of all need to ask the community, are they happy with the current arrangements? And then if they're not, then we actually need to look at, are we getting good value for money, and are there other options? So in conclusion, I will be voting against this, and I will be putting a motion forward that we direct council officers to investigate communities' desire to provide burial options within the Lower Hutt if this doesn't succeed.
Thank you, Councillor Parkin. Mayor Barry.
First off, before I comment, just to clarify exactly what the recommendations are, because I don't, this, is it just the recommendations on the front page?
We've got to give advice.
Because that's not actually giving a direction.
No, we've got advice.
That council provides direction.
Yeah, so, Chris is obviously wanting to put that we do it. I'm going to make the case that we don't do it. So, and then we'll have the discussion maybe. So I suppose I don't disagree with what Councillor Parkin, most of what Councillor Parkin just said. I think they're all absolutely fair, legitimate points. However, we can't look at this in a vacuum. We do need to think about that we are about to go out to our community with a 12.8% rates rise. We already have a jam-packed program. We've just made decisions that will look to scale back work in potentially the policy area of council and our engagement area. And I'm concerned that if we were to put this item on our agenda, that is more work for officers, and it also starts some obviously large conversations, which, as Councillor Parkin pointed out, will be very costly down the track as well. Now, I don't think we should not have the conversation at all. What I think we should do is say that we continue with our current approach, but this matter is dealt with at the next long-term plan, and it can be combined with all of the work which is to occur during that LTP, and then you're able to, I think, engage our community on what is a long-term issue without all of the additional cost of running this as its own separate process.
Thank you. Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Chair. Similar thoughts to me, Barry, on this isn't something that will be happening in the next 12 months. It's not something that should try to be rushed into our engagement around our annual plan, and therefore it is a long-term plan matter. In my time as a councillor, very few people have come to me and said this is a core issue or a core reason, and whenever I engage residents, I ask what's on top for you, what's important for you, and I take it, it's not often that we may have conversations around death, but unfortunately, families every day are impacted by death in our city. And if this was a prevalent issue around burial, this would be coming up to our attention more frequently. I hear Daniel's points around, in the past, previous councils may not have done things well, but consulting now on a previously poorly done process doesn't resolve the poorly done process if it was poor at all. And so, yes, I understand that some people disagree with previous decisions of previous councils, but us doing a bespoke process now and reprioritising resource while resource is scarce is not going to get the outcomes for our community that they deserve. So I concur with Mayor Barry in that our guidance as part of these recommendations to officers is look to the long-term plan. We can engage community broadly at that point in time and hear their voice in an appropriate way where it actually becomes more apparent to people that we're engaging on it. If it's a standalone bespoke thing, it's going to get very little resource if it was to happen, and therefore wouldn't have a broad reach. Therefore, the number of people engaged will be minimal. And to the original critique of Daniel, not enough people were engaged in that process. The biggest engagement that this council does is the long-term plan, and that's where a matter of this significance deserves to sit.
Councillor Tupou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too agree with that this is a long-term planning issue that should be consulted on. And I agree that this shouldn't be rushed. There are certainly, when it comes to the topic of death, there are cultural considerations, Madam Chair. These mana whenua have a huge, would have a huge say on this as well, because we're talking about what was once their whenua. But also in cultural practices as a diverse city, how that all works together. So I support this to be a long-term issue that should be consulted on. I think Upper Hutt may have, don't know if they did something similar, but I think that this is certainly the direction we should be moving. Kia ora.
Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora. Just want to clarify that I'm more than happy if this ends up being a long-term plan. It's more that we actually have that conversation. And my original proposal was actually that we just go out to the community, see whether or not this is worth including in the long-term plan. If it goes straight into the long-term plan as that consultation and the most appropriate way of doing it, I'm more than happy that we have that conversation through the LTP process.
Mayor Barry.
Just to clarify, I think that what we would be doing is referring this to the long-term plan subcommittee of a future council, so which could look different, as a matter for consideration as part of that, because we can't force a future council to do it, but that would then be on at least the work program that the officials could record. Yeah.
Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora. Without repeating everyone, I just want to acknowledge Daniel and the excellent expertise you've given us, and it's so wonderful to have your narrative to help shape where we're thinking. I was quite indifferent coming into this discussion today, but I feel assured because I do believe we need consultation, and I do believe not only do we need to look at Lower Hutt, but we actually need to think regionally around these issues and how we're collectively working together. So the fact that it could go into that next, or shall go into that next LTP planning, gives me reassurance that we'll do it properly and we'll do it the right way. So thank you for the consideration and thinking, and thanks Councillor Parkin for bringing that up, because I concur with a lot of what you're saying as well. So thank you.
If there's no more discussion, I'm just going to take a minute to get our additional recommendation. Okay, call the members back.
Actually, not 27, not 36.
Okay, I'm going to get the new set of recommendations up.
Just say that the
So the addition is item 4, continues with the current strategic direction and as part of deliberations, the matter would be reconsidered as part of the 2027-37 long-term plan, and we've confirmed that the seconder is comfortable with that. Okay. So we've moved the motion, the amended motion, have a seconder. All of those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against? Declare the motion carried. Thank you, everyone, for all of that. So we're going to move to item 7, proposal for granting long-term leases on reserve land, page 28 of the agenda. I'll ask Nicole to come forward. Do you have anything to add to your report, Noel? Nicole, we'll take it as read.
No, just report as read, please.
Any questions, members? No? Okay, if there's no questions, I'll move the motion that the committee notes and receives the content of the report, and 2, approves the grant of long-term leases to Sea Cadets Association New Zealand and the Lions Club Lower Hutt Charitable Trust for the reason of granting these leases and would provide continued charitable and non-profit activities on council land. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tupou. Is there any discussion? No. The motion has been put forward and seconded. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? I declare the motion carried. Thank you, Nicole. Very straightforward. I'm going to call forward Andrew for whakatupu ngai, item 6 that we skipped. Please come forward, Andrew. Page 22 of the agenda. Yeah. Kia ora, Andrew. I'll hand it over to you if you've got anything to add.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ko Andrew Quintakawengoa. This is the report for Whakatupu Nainai for the period November 2024 up to end of January 2025. I've tried to summarise the key points of progress there in the recommendations. Nothing really more to say. As we've heard, there have been 1 or 2 teething problems as we expected, and we're working through those along with a list of items to be fixed by the main contractor. We're also in the process of closing out financials, which will take us probably through to the end of March, and we're ready to declare whether or not the project has produced a surplus, which at the moment it's likely to. I guess the other main point is that work has started on the 3rd component of Whakatupu Nainai, which is the creation of a playful landscape within Walter Mildenhall Park. Progress is good. We started on time. We're looking to finish around about the end of August, subject to the weather. And we're just working through 1 or 2 items of scope enhancements where the community has asked us to look at certain features within the park, namely a wharekai, that could be enhanced with the surplus funds that are currently available within the Nainai Spatial Plan. Take the rest of the paper as read and answer any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Do we have any questions? Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Andrew, for your work. Just wanting to check in. As we've completed some significant milestones recently, and I know that all that you've brought to this council and your project management skills, we've been very rewarded. Just wanting to make sure that any reflection processes that are ongoing are being documented, not only for the team that you've been leading, but also for wider council and other projects in the future to make sure that we are implementing your best practice and we're making sure we're going to get value in the long run from those learnings organisationally too.
Very good points, and I can assure you that the process of closing out a project, these components are still projects within their own right, so they deserve a proper closeout process. Part of that normal process for council is that we hold a lessons learned workshop where the participants, contractors, consultants, design team members, etc., anyone that's played a part in the success of that project gathers together and shares the lessons that they've learned, where things that went well would like to be repeated in the future, and how we make sure that the opportunity is enhanced, and things that didn't quite go according to plan, we can mitigate for those and make sure they don't happen again. That closeout process will come through council in the form of a closeout report. So it's a full report with lessons learnt workshop attached to it, and those lessons learnt are shared both within council and within those participants that come along to the workshop.
Fantastic. And just following up on that, Andrea, is it possible for each of the components of Whakatipu Nainai and that project as its entirety, as it kind of comes to a close, that those learnings are kind of put in a document, not just for management, but also for the governance team, particularly with an incoming council? I'm sure there's going to be some learnings as well from governance decision makers over the course of Whakatipu Nainai too. And I think that as a standalone document will stand the test of time for our collective learnings, and hopefully something we can share regionally and nationally as well with our colleagues.
Councillor Shaw.
Thanks, Andrew. Really can't thank you enough for that wonderful facility that's up there. It is just fabulous, and you know, really amazing opening and lots of positive comments. The question I have of you is about time and limit parking. I'm not sure if this sits with you, the traffic management, but there was talk at some stage to do a little bit of a roundup of all the businesses to see how that time limit parking is going. Does that sit within your jurisdiction?
It's something I'm working with my colleagues in transport, noting that parking usage within the town centre has shifted dramatically in 2019 when the pool was closed, and has shifted again now in 2025 now that the pool is open, and so that frequency of use has changed, and in some cases is putting pressure on certain areas that are currently P120, and in other areas not quite so much, and so there's a redistribution. So one of the things that we wanted to do was just have a bit of a survey of how that's been used, both feedback from the community, from the shop owners along Everest Ave and the rest of the town centre, how that's working at the moment, what are the issues, how we might change parking restrictions, noting that it would have to go through Transport Subcommittee. So we'll start that process now with a period of reflection, survey and feedback from all the businesses affected by the pool.
Any final questions? Not. Thank you for your report, Andrew, and I'll move the motion, and if we could get it up on the screen. Please look at the recommendations up on the screen. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan, is there any discussion? No. I've put the motion forward and it's moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. We're going to go to item 9, page 42 of the agenda, and Neighbourhoods and Communities Focus Area Programming. And Lauren, I'll ask you to come forward. And I'll hand it over to you first, Adrian, with introductions. Kia ora.
Madam Chair, tēnā koe, e roi rangatira, mihi ana atu ki a koutou katoa. Ahiuri o haunga te awa te awa e mea nai tūhoi, engari e noho anō ki te awa Kairangi, ki Tailao Hutt, ki Normandale, e nai nei. Ko tūpoko o ngā hāpuri tūhono ahau, koe mo tōko ingo nō reira tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Took the opportunity with the paper coming through to you all from my team to just come and introduce myself to you all. I'm Adrian. I joined the council in December as the new head of Connected Communities. Real honour to be here with you today. Kia ora. I'll hand over to Lauren, who's to my left, who I'm sure you all know, currently holds the role of our Programs and Innovation Manager, the brains child behind the advice in front of you now. And we've also brought along Sophie, who's our Programs and Partnerships Facilitator and knows all things about our Solace capability, which brings new insights to our programming work. So, kaya koe, Lauren. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Adrian. Kia ora, Chair, Councillors. I'm here to introduce our paper, which outlines how we've refined our approach to community programming. The new Neighbourhood and Communities model established a coordinated and strategically aligned programme of activities, and this paper details how we've achieved that. We've ensured centralised oversight of activities and alignment with Council's broader strategic outcomes, whilst also helping to eliminate duplication and enhance efficiency of programme delivery. Our new Solace database, which Sophie can speak to, is already providing us valuable insights, allowing us to track participation and identify gaps to shape programming based on data. I will take the report as read, but I welcome any questions.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Shaw.
Kia ora, thanks for the paper. It's a really positive paper, and I'm really pleased with where you're heading with this evidence-based data, and so to assist with that programming. And it looks to me far less ad hoc and more targeted. My question, though, is around Walter Nash. The figures for attendance there are just through the roof in comparison to others. Do those numbers capture sporting events such as basketball and netball, or just events?
Yep, the reason that number is so high is it accounts for everything that's been logged in the Solace database, including the large events, to sporting events, to smaller programs. It's everything.
So my next question is about Walter Nash again. So it really highlights to me the need and importance for that event centre to be continually invested in. So that crosses over into other departments as well, doesn't it?
Correct, yes.
Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora, thank you for the report. Like Councillor Shaw said, it's good to see some of the detail and evidence-based. My question is probably heading down to the fairly specific, but it's on community halls and the charging rate. I'm just wondering if you can elucidate a little bit on why faith-based bookings, which I would generally consider are a community activity at least, are currently rated at the individual benefit level. And just wondering if you can provide some clarity on that.
I can probably answer that one. So that's a bookings criteria that was designed and agreed and adopted as part of the long-term plan. And so that was when we took the assets, how we categorise different activities differently. Generally, the community events are events that are open to all community, free for people to attend, not around a specific interest group. So where it's a specific interest group, there's deemed to be a bit more individual benefit.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I've got a question, Lauren, that what's the impact the new app has having on our ability to analyse the data around our programs?
It's been absolutely instrumental. It has allowed us to collate data on our service offerings. We've been working with various teams across council to make sure our tagging of various activities and events is correct, to give us a better and greater insight as to the lay of the land of programming across Te Awa Kairangi and therefore the gaps that are there. I'm going to pass over to Sophie now. She has an additional comment to make.
Just in answering that question, thank you, Chair. If you refer to the appendix, it refers to the categories that Lauren is talking to. We didn't have this detailed information previously, and now we can see with the introduction of training of staff and consistency that we are seeing that the programs are matching to these categories and we're able to evaluate their effectiveness more.
Add one more point, if I may, Madam Chair. We're on a journey with Solace. We're still quite early in its application across council. We do have several teams that are using it, but it is fair to say that we've got some more work to do to make this a more holistic approach.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to get the recommendations up on the screen. Elected members, you will have read these, so I'm going to move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan. Do I have any discussion? Councillor Shaw.
I've already mentioned that I'm really pleased with where you're heading with this evidence-based data, and I think the data shows truly the importance of our three major hubs and the great work that the staff are doing there, Kuranui, Wainuiomata and Walter Nash. Being a Northern Ward councillor, I kind of always look at what's in it for us, and I have to say that what I read is really great stuff happening, especially around Fraser Park, Walter Nash, and up in Stoke Valley, Spaldhurst Park. So some great work going on. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora. I'd also just like to say congratulations to the team. This is so important to have measurable data that really guides us in our practices and our strategic plan of where we're going. And to go into what's on, and have a look, it's so fantastic and so user-friendly. So I just want to say thank you so much for all the good work you're doing, and may it continue, and may we continue to get stronger and stronger with that data so that we can do more and more things effectively. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. So I will move forward, but before just my comment is that well done with this work with the app. We have been talking about this for quite a long time now, of that, especially in the community space. We know sort of the numbers, we know what we're doing, but to get some impact reporting that's starting to come through is really good, and it's really showing, it's going to show where council, where we make our best efforts, what we should do more of and maybe what we should do less of. So thank you for your work. So I've put the motion forward, it's been seconded, and all those in favour say aye. Those against? I declare the motion carried. Kia ora koutou. So we'll now move to item 10, information items, and I'll ask Andrea.
Thank you, Chair. So this cycle's director's report is again a very good read. You will see that in the warmer months we've had an increase in outdoor activity, and that includes things like community programming, which you've just been hearing about, but also delivery of the Parks and Reserves work program, which always steps up a gear this time of year. And that includes the completion of the new Southern Ash Garden at Wainuiomata Gardens of Remembrance, several playground renewals, and also the first projects in the sports field drainage program, which is really exciting. You've just met our new head of Connected Communities, who is Adrienne Moore, and you'll be seeing a lot more of her in the future. And I did just want to pick up on Councillor Shaw's point there about, and also yours, Chair, about having an evidence base to our work. In the Director's report, you'll see that we are piloting a new way of reporting on how we work, how our work connects to those broad social and cultural outcomes that Council is targeting. Reporting progress and impact on those high-level outcomes can be really challenging because Council is just one contributor, and the impact may depend on several factors and may take several years. And so officers have been working with the chair of the committee to develop a reporting template that's designed to demonstrate that impact and provide a qualitative evidence base to inform future direction of the work. And it's based on the results-based accountability method that is in use in central government, but just modified a little for our own circumstances. And there are some examples of that that are attached to the director's report this month, which hopefully you've found also really helpful in terms of having an evidence base. I just wanted to mention too that this morning, of course, many of you were at Rico Sports Centre for a blessing which recognises the start of a new relationship, a new partnership between Wellington Phoenix and Council and the founding member clubs at Rico Sports Centre. And that is something that's very exciting, again, has the potential to be a real win-win for everyone involved.
Questions, members? Any questions? If there's no questions, I'll move the motion that the committee receives and notes the information. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shaw. Put the motion forward and it's seconded. All those in favour say aye. Those against? I declare the motion carried. I'll move to item B. The Forward program. Does any member have a question? No? If not, I'll move the motion that the Forward program 2025 Communities, Culture and Partnerships Committee be received and noted. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan. I now put I'll put the motion forward and I have a seconder. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against? I declare the motion carried. I have received no questions, so we'll move to our closing karakia. I noi tātou, mai te tohe rangi ki te tohu noku, te aho i roto, marama i roto, tupu mauri ora ki te whai ao, ki te ao marama, haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora everybody, and I declare the meeting closed at 4:02. Kia ora.